Hey guys, what's up? Hope everybody's doing good out there today, and thanks for taking a few minutes out of your day to watch the video. Really appreciate it. And today I want to have a little conversation regarding big bass and why very few people out there, very few bass anglers have ever caught an 8-pound bass or bigger, and sort of explain why that is and maybe give you some tips and advice to maybe get you one day. But hey, just real quick, just want to make a quick reminder here. If you guys haven't had a chance to go over and check out fishthemoment.com, I'd like to invite you to do so and check out our lake map breakdowns. We got our fall lake map breakdowns coming out all over the country. Personal lake map breakdowns, got a lot of really good stuff over there. You can check out at fishthemoment.com. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about this 8-pound plus deal and why very few guys have ever caught one. There's two main reasons for the reason that most people have never caught an 8-pound bass. And both of them, one of them is a little bit more important than the other one is very important too. But the biggest factor as far as why not many people have caught an 8-pounder is they're not fishing where 8-pounders live. You know, in order to catch 8-pound bass, you have got to be fishing a lake that has a population of big fish in it. And there's very few places that really do that. There's only a handful of states that have big numbers of 8-pound plus fish in it, and those states for the most part are Florida, Texas. There's an oddball, you know, like Lake Chickamauga puts out some big fish in there. That's sort of an oddball, but basically in the southeast part of the country, you know, Texas and Florida is where the most of the 8-pounders come, or in California. So those three states, I'm going to guess they probably account for, I'm going to say 80% of the big bass that are taken every year across this country. So don't feel bad if you haven't caught an 8-pound bass, because you hear these guys, you know, holding up 10 and 12 pounders. They're catching 10 and 12 pounders because they're fishing where 10 and 12 pounders live. I'll take a prime example. You know, one of my good buddies, Brent Chapman, Elite Series Pro for years, you know, Brent, Bass Angler of the Year. He's never caught a 10-pound bass, and he has literally, you know, fished as much as anybody watching this video ever on the tour level. And the reason Brent hasn't caught a 10-pounder is that he lives in Kansas, number one, and he doesn't fish many lakes occasionally, other than when they just occasionally go to some in those big fish lakes that have a lot of big fish in it. So most of the people that catch big fish, 8 to 10 pounders, they live in those states that they do that. Other than that, it's sort of just almost like a lottery. You know, back here in Missouri, you know, I've caught quite a few 8-pounders, but I haven't caught one forever. You know, a lot of the big bass that were here in Missouri back in the late 70s and early 80s are gone now because of fishing pressure. And I haven't caught an 8-pound bass in probably, it's been 15 years in Missouri since I caught an 8-pounder. And I caught a 9.4 at Table Rock about 12 or 15 years ago. But other than that, I caught a lot of them like in the early 80s, but they're very rare anymore. So the first thing is don't get frustrated, don't get mad at your skills if you haven't caught big ones, because all those dudes that live in those states I talked about are sort of hogging up all the big ones, so they're not doing anything any different. The second thing, as far as why most people haven't caught an 8-pounder, is they're not fishing for 8-pounders. A lot of the big fish that people catch, they come just fishing just for whatever they can catch. They're just fishing regular baits, crank baits, jigs, spinner baits, that type of stuff. And if they happen to catch a big one, it's sort of a random coincidence. The guys that catch the consistent big fish, even beyond the ones that are living in those states that I mentioned that have a lot of big fish in it, are the guys that are targeting big fish specifically with big baits. And when I'm talking about big baits, there's a handful of baits that consistently produce those giant bass over anything else. And the biggest one right off the bat is a big swim bait. You know, those big, you know, 7 to 12 inch long swim baits are the number one big bass producer around most of the country, specifically in California. So a lot of those guys that are catching big ones all the time that you read about, I mean, they're throwing those big swim baits all the time, and they may go days or even weeks without a single bite, but you know, when they get one, it tends to be a big fish. Other baits that produce a big fish are more seasonal. say for example, you know, one of the best ways to catch a really giant bass is like slow rolling a big 1 ounce spinner bait in the pre-spawn. That catches some big ones. In the summertime of the year, you know, your deep diving crankbaits or your like 10 and 12 inch worms will produce some big fish. But for the most part, if you're going to be catching those big ones, you're going to have to fish those big giant swim baits to catch those you know, giant fish, especially in the lakes that don't have a lot of big ones in it. And there's 8-pounders in almost every lake in the country. I mean, there's, you know, most all of the state records across the United States, I don't care even if they're up in the northern part of the country, are 10 pounds or exceeding 10 pounds, for largemouth that is. So, you know, it's not that they don't live there, but they get more and more difficult to catch every year. You know, fishing pressure, you know, loss of habitat, everything that goes with it, it just reduces those big fish numbers. So anyway, guys, just a quick tip here. You know, don't feel bad if you haven't caught big ones. More than likely it's because you're not fishing where big ones live. And if there's no big ones where you're fishing, you're not going to catch any big ones. And secondly, you know, fish for big ones if you want to try to catch one. Put on some of those big, giant 8-10 inch swim baits, throw them all day long, and when you get bit on them, the odds are that, you know, you'll have a lot better chance of catching one. So that's my tip. You know, I hope it helps you guys out if you're just hog hunting all the time. But like I said, just don't feel bad if you haven't caught a big one, because they're not easy to catch. They're just sort of a gift when they happen. So I hope you guys are doing good. We'll talk later.